Welcome to another episode of Art is Hard. My name is Alicia DeSantis, founder of 38th and Kip Studio, a branding, graphic design, and illustration studio. Today I'm interviewing Bryan Moss, muralist, painter, illustrator, and designer out of Columbus, Ohio. He's worked as a professional artist for the past 20 years. He's self-taught, which is really interesting. And he focuses on creating impact and camaraderie within the arts community. His clients include Marvel, Sprite, Coca-Cola, White Castle, Easton Town Center, and he has a longtime partnership with the Greater Columbus Arts Council. He curated the exhibition Black Panther, celebrating 50 plus years of Black superheroes for King Arts Complex. And his paintings have been featured in exhibitions at Harvard, Mac, Washington, Art Space, Lima. His first solo exhibition, About Time, The Art of Bryan Moss, debuted at the Columbus Museum of Art in 2022. And his first graphic novel, The Eightfold Path, which was written by Steve Barnes and Charles Johnson, was published by Megascope imprint at the AbramsComicArts in 2022. As you can tell, he's got a lot going on over the past couple of years. He is currently at work on his comic series for kids, Rita's Dream. Phenomenal guy, down to earth, someone who really can showcase what you can do when you have this pure skill and you have a creative mindset and a creative passion. Welcome back to Art is Hard. I have Bryan Moss here, esteemed multimedia artist living in Columbus. Been trying to get him on the show forever, so I'm so stoked to have him. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
You are so well known throughout various camps. I mean, you've been doing the thing that strikes me about you is that your pieces have such a different look depending on the media you're using. So like the piece we're going to talk about today looks so different than the cups you designed for Sonic. It looks like two totally different artists. And that's, I think, really unique about you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's one of those things where like diversifying the skill set allowed me to like make a living. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where I learn different type of aesthetics through being forced to learn how to do a new project, right? So it's a lot of learning and a lot of processing going on with that. So I appreciate that acknowledgement.
Right on. So today we're going to talk about your piece that is currently in the Columbus Museum of Art.
Mm-hmm.
And what's
Yep.
this piece titled?
Actually, I wish I knew that. That's the side effect of being but I think it's
Titling is
called,
the worst.
yeah, I think it's called Forest. So we're gonna go
Okay.
with, okay. If you get to the museum at Columbus Museum of Art and it's called like Trees, then I'm sorry. I really am.
Close enough. Close enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what happens is that I title the pieces according to the show, so I'll name a piece different based upon the exhibition. You know what I mean? So I don't leave it locked
Interesting.
in. Yeah, my approach is completely fluid. So it's this week it might be called trees, because it's such an abstraction of nature that I can play with it in 100 different ways. So that's actually kind of like the point of the art in a lot of ways.
I love that. And so this is, I have it in front of me here. This is an oil painting. And this is
Mhm.
large. I mean, this is what, 50, 40 by 40, 50 by 50?
Yeah, it's 4 feet by 4 feet, so that'd be 48. Yeah, 50. Yeah, you're spot on. That's a good eye.
So tell me a little bit about the process behind this and the inspiration.
Yeah, so with this piece with Forest, it was one of those things where I was experimenting with material, and I was kind of developing my oil painting techniques at the time. I actually painted this painting a long time ago, around 2016, I want to say. Now, what happens is never assume that like the something you make now won't be relevant later, obviously. And yes, it's a pain in the butt to carry so much work, but it was well worth it, obviously, because it connected eventually. So you kind of have to understand when you paint, you're painting into the future, right? So what that looks like is when I did this, I was really interested in breaking composition. So creating a pathway for one idea. So if we look at the piece, and not to get super nerdy, but
Do it,
um,
please. That's what this is about.
all right, cool. So if you notice, I'm actually developing the techniques on the outside of the painting where I'm kind of trying to develop the language. And that's include tube painting, which is just where I squeeze the oil paint directly onto the board. So a lot of that has tactility to it, you know, a layer of molding, I guess you could kind of say.
Yeah.
Because what I was trying to figure out was even in a space, if you just cut out a 1 foot by 1 foot square of any part of the painting, you're still going to get that composition and that layering. So I was really into expanding the composition, but also creating little micro compositions within it. Now that kind of started creating this language of like, and I usually use nature when I'm trying to figure out something because it's the easiest thing to manipulate that you can get by with, you know, because if you start doing humans, like drawing humans or painting humans, it gets a little, you can't really, there's not much room for error, you know. So with this piece, and then the second half of it was to create high contrast, but through local colors, so meaning colors you would find in nature. That
Mhm.
was another aspect I wanted to play with. And then the last aspect that I wanted to go for was taking narrative and abstracting that as well. So if you see the yellow in the painting, that represents the sun, obviously, but you would never be able to tell because I completely just stretch it out, curve it. It doesn't have to be literal, right?
Mhm.
So these are kind of the ideas that I'm expressing in the painting. And so, but when it comes to narrative, I always saw it as me sitting in a tree from above and looking down and out. So kind of like when you're in a tree, because I used to climb trees a lot as a kid. And there is something magical about the idea of being higher when you're little, right? Now that idea, I always had that memory seared into my brain, and that was the idea that I wanted to convey after I started getting a pathway for the composition. And I knew that's where I wanted to go with it, and so I'm really proud of it. From those points, from those three key points, I feel that I delivered. But like I said, that painting sat with me, and I carried it around for all these years, and then finally the museum bought it. So I was like, "Oh, okay, it was worth it."
I'll say. I mean, yeah, that's pretty the the thing that would be so challenging for me is because I too have art that, is going on 15 I forget how old I am now,
Mm,
15, 20 years old, and I'll
mhm.
see it and it's like, do I wanna mess with it? Like, I
Right,
feel especially with oil, when you could easily mess with it, that would
totally.
be challenging for me.
Yeah, and it is interesting because when you get through into that mid-career, because a lot of my mentors are a lot older than me, and I'll see them go back to a piece they did in the '80s and start messing with it and manipulating it, and I'm like, "Whoa, that's like," because to me, I dig it, you know, I just haven't entered that space yet, so I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, all the stuff I'm carrying around. I mean, a lot of it's prints,
Mm,
printmaking and various watercolors, but I can't even imagine having to carry around, uh,
massive oil paint.
massive oil paintings, right?
Yeah, this is actually on masonite, so it's like a door basically. So I got a little I got a little smarter to switch to canvas later, but early
Oh
on,
my goodness.
I used to paint on masonite because it's a more affordable, 1,
Mhm,
and then 2, it has more of a drawing kind of surface to it, you know, you get that resistance versus that canvas that pops, right? So
mhm.
with that resistance I needed at the time because of how aggressive I would paint. But now I have a lot more finesse. So I can like actually like I can paint on like linen at this point, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Oh. So with this so speaking of your process here, So you use a variety of brushes, or do you stick to mostly
Yeah,
one
so I'll
with?
actually yeah, so the way the brushes and the material work typically for me is, I do a kind of thing, and this would be now, this is, like, not during when I was painting this, but, currently, I approach painting like, whatever I have around is what I'm using. That being said, I do have standards and structure, so that's one of those things are brushes. I just use anything. So I grew up with mentors and art teachers who are taught brushes very they were like sacred, you know.
Mhm.
And so with me, I kind of treat it as disposable because that sounds really bad when I say it actually. But the reason I treat the material as disposable, meaning brushes and stuff like that, probably comes from working with kids and they destroy a lot of brushes. So I've actually learned how to like paint with cheap material from growing up poor. So as an example, you use what you have around as a kid when you have nothing. Well, it's not even a kid being poor. Just as a kid, we don't have access to like really nice art supplies. So
Right.
you kind of like, especially here in the Midwest, right? So as we grow up and develop, something like this, this painting, I used just regular. I prefer synthetic brushes, and I prefer anything large. So anything that is flat and large, that is synthetic I use because of it being disposable. Now, that being said, the oil paints that I use, that's typically whatever is on sale. And that might sound very transparent. Like that might be
No,
like,
I love it. I love it.
like to be like a successful artist. A lot of times we romanticize like nonsense. And what I mean by that is that we'll indulge when we become successful, we'll indulge these ideas, this romanticism. And I like to demystify that idea that successful artists have to use this premium material. You know, that's a fallacy. It's not true. But I do use, what do I use? Gambling. I use about 3 or 4, Van Dyke, oils. I use about 3 or 4 variations of oil paints. And usually I get sponsors for that stuff now. So I have sponsors with Princeton Art Supplies and a couple of others, GCAC, and then Columbus City Schools. They sponsor a lot of my art supplies. So usually if you want high end material, have somebody sponsor it for you. But with this painting, very just straightforward material that you would find at Michael's and Lowe's. Like the board is from Lowe's, actually. I had them cut it there. I
I love
remember.
that. Shout out to Lowe's. Maybe I can get Lowe's to sponsor Art is Hard.
Yeah, dude. Oh my gosh. If I was to explain to anyone, Lowe's is the best art supply store ever. If you're upset in your town and you're like, there's no art supply store, go to Lowe's. It is incredible.
I always like to go to Lowe's. I kind of like the way it smells.
Yeah, me too. I
And I'm
love
kind of
it.
claustrophobic, so I like that it's really big.
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah, very industrial. The thing I like about it also is that like there's blue collar people there. I saw that's what I grew up around, and that's the environment I come from. So it's relatable art form, right? So I can go there, talk to them, and they're actually interested, because they're artists too.
Yeah.
It's Lowe's is an art studio for people who build houses. You know what I mean, and stuff like that. So you actually get a lot of feedback in those environments. So I actually really like Lowe's. Never thought our conversation would go there, but that's okay.
It always goes, I never know what's going to happen with this. I mean, there's all different directions it goes with this.
Yeah,
It's,
Brian, do you want to talk about music?
it's very organic. It's very organic. Do,
Totally,
do you
totally.
see, and you may enjoy this comment or you may detest this comment, but the
Okay.
first thing I think of as you're talking is Basquiat,
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm a fan of him.
but he's extreme. I mean, he's like,
Yeah.
constantly on the border of overdosing,
Yeah, exactly. It's
paints
always
on cardboard,
yes. Yeah,
and
there's a lot of inspiration from that because Basquiat, with him, when how like a lot of that stuff was just like spray paint on walls and stuff, right? Like really early on, or the material he used. It's all about what you find, make something out of it. And then it's a really early version. Now that we're talking about this, oh my gosh, Basquiat was doing some upcycling essentially. You know what I mean? He was upcycling.
He was woke. He
Yes,
was woke.
yeah, he was upcycling and woke because he would take stuff out the trash and turn it into art, right? So it's
Yeah.
very but it's just funny. But isn't that interesting though? Like the aesthetic is what counts because we've all done that, but our paintings weren't worth anything. Basquiat did it, and they're worth millions, right? So
Hmm.
it's how that works. But yeah, no, I don't detest that at all. I really, he was a big inspiration for me. Broke a
Right
lot of
on.
that, fight a lot of that art nonsense, right?
Yep. Yep.
For us.
So who else is an inspiration for you?
I grew up. So I had my mentor when I was a kid. And she still is my mentor, Lori Allmiller. She's amazing, and she um taught me when I was in kindergarten slash first grade art. And so by the time I was 10, I knew how to like do everything in a studio. And then so I could like glaze, load kilns, unload
Wow.
kilns, sweep, set up stuff, do the ceramics class, do the painting class, all that stuff. Um, because it was an escape for me because I was able to get out of my environment and the art transferred me into a space where people didn't look at me for being poor or the color of my skin. They looked at me for my aesthetics and what I was able to do. So that gave me a huge sense of pride. And so Lori Allmiller is definitely like the first person to be my mentor, to inspire me, to be a muse for me. And then I would say, but art wise, when we think about painters, a lot of the Spanish painters for me, so Goya,
Hmm.
Velázquez, Picasso, these guys are the heavy hitters of the El Greco. These are the heavy hitters of Spain. There's like six of them, and so I studied in Spain for a little bit, and it was so the Spanish painters are just it for me. But locally, or not even locally, but I also draw comics for a living, as you know. And so a lot of those comic book artists influenced me as well, even in my paintings. And those would be curators like Jack Kirby. He's the one who created basically all the Marvel universe. He's my favorite comic book artist. A lot of the old stuff, you'll see it behind me. Charles Schultz, Peanuts, Popeye. So a lot of comic book artists influenced me. But I would say my main influence out of all of these things put together would probably be mm, there's a painter, George Bellows, out of Columbus, Ohio. He's from the Ashcan. I would say George Bellows because I was able to spend a lot of time with the artwork at the museum. And he painted in a more fluid, lyrical style. So it was more documenting the times. So I would say George Bellows, and plus he also drew comics, and he went to OSU, and so I kind of set my career after his, in the sense of where I'm trying to achieve. Also, another mentor for me is Amina Robinson. If anyone knows who she is, if you don't, check her out. Columbus local artist, but internationally recognized. So she's an international artist. So I lived in her house for a year, and that was an experience. But yeah, so long story, that would be all my influences in like a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. So what would you say, last question, what would you say to folks about making art? What do you, artists and non-artists alike, what would you want people to know?
Um, I like to kind of gatekeep art a little bit in the sense that it's not for everyone. And what I mean by that is that um, I don't want people in the art world that are here to exploit it or take things away because I deal with that all the time. So there's a lot of so I like to gatekeep artists and I like to gatekeep art and protect it so it's not for everyone. But for those who have a calling for art, I want, and that could be just the idea of like 5-minute crafts. this isn't some profound thing. We're talking like little a, not even big A.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it's important, if you have any desire to make art, I think the first way to find out if you do is if you see something basic like a computer screen and you can see art in that. Or if you look at a book, not even a graphic novel, just a regular book, and you can appreciate even just the binding of it, or the little things. We're not talking about the big purpose of making a book. So when I think about art, I think about it in the sense that if you're going to make it, have like an honest conversation with yourself or with art. And the way that looks like is just you engaging with it on a daily level. You don't have to make it. You can just walk down the street and be like, "Oh, that building's pretty interesting looking." You know what I mean? Those kind of, or like, "Oh, that's a cool bike design," or "Those shoes are cool." So by
Yeah.
creating the language that allows you to communicate about art, automatically makes you an artist because there's a level of passion that's there now.
Yeah.
Now
The
to
art exists as the thought.
yeah, exactly. You got it. That is perfect.
Man, that's
We need some
intense.
tattoos. We need some tattoos.
That's
But
intense. Don't
yes.
don't get me started on
Now,
tattoos. I got too many as it is.
right. So that right there is the goal, because now if you can communicate, then you can express it. Because you understand that it doesn't matter. Because what's the problem? When people are insecure about art and they don't know the language and they'll say, "Oh, I can't even draw a line." It's like, well,
Yes.
that's just ridiculous. So the goal is to create a space to where there's an appreciation, no different than if you're gaining weight and you're like, "Oh, I need to lose weight." There's an understanding there. That's a dialogue. So in order to engage with art, you can just appreciate it, and then you can express that appreciation. And that's all art really is. So if you express the thought and the feeling, then you have art. And the outcome doesn't matter what you make, because I could be happy and it could be rainy and I can have wood and glue, and that's going to express something different than if I was um, drunk and at my friend's house at a painting studio, and we're listening to jazz painting. Different outcomes, but still it's based upon the same thing, an appreciation and a feeling. So you put those things together and you got art. And we complicate it way too much. I really think we do.
Yeah. That really strikes me. It reminds me of something that one of my art professors in college told me is apathy is the worst thing you can have.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
if
exactly.
someone looks at your work and has nothing to say, that's the worst. If they look at it and say, "I don't get it," great,
Yeah, that's the start of
great.
the conversation, exactly.
Yeah,
Even when people say things like, "I could paint that," by dismissing it, it's like, at least they're engaging. It's like, "Oh, okay, can you show me what that looks like? Because I would be curious to see you stretch a canvas." You know?
yep,
So because they're thinking of just the painting, right?
yep,
But now that opens up a conversation. It's like, well, no, people stretch canvas. The wall's painted for a certain reason. The tag that's there is for a certain reason. So just because the execution is simple doesn't mean that the art and presentation of it is simple. You know what I mean? So even by somebody being critical, that opens up a conversation about what is there, what's there, what's actually there. You know what I mean?
right.
So
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
like criticism. So I'm with you 100% on that.
I love it.
Apathy is horrible.
Yep, right on. So where
Mhm.
can folks find you?
They can find me on Strange Things Moss. That's my Instagram. If you type in Bryan Christopher Moss, there's a politician, but if you type in Bryan Christopher Moss art, you get me. I'm not a white old man. So on Facebook, it's gonna
But
be
well,
Bryan
I'll make sure I'll put his picture
this picture
and
of it.
post production so people know, and then with the X with the
Yeah,
circle.
yeah, type in Bryan Moss politician, he'll pop right up for you. So yeah, you can find me there. My email is strangethingsmoss@gmail.com. So You can reach out to me there. I'm always working, always selling art. Easy person to get a hold of. Hard to keep up with though, but it's just because I'm busy. If you want something done, ask a busy person. Don't ask the lazy person.
Mm-hmm. Right. Bryan, thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. And this is a lot of fun to talk with you.
Yeah. This has been a long time coming, so I really appreciate it.
Right on. And thanks to all our watchers. We'll see you next time.
Bye.